had a baby with a woman. Well, my grandson in the middle of the movie like, Papa Snoop, how she have a baby with a woman? She a woman. Oh, I didn't come in for this. I just came to watch the goddamn movie.
It all started when Snoop Dogg took his grandson to see a movie, and a same-sex scene appeared on screen. What happened next set the internet on fire. Some people praised him for being honest, while others called him hypocritical. Then T.S. Madison stepped in, calling out what she saw as absurd, and from there, everything exploded online. But beyond the headlines and the viral drama, there's a deeper story here. One that's really about identity, hypocrisy, and who actually gets to speak for inclusion. Back in August 2025, Snoop Dogg sparked conversation after sharing his frustration about a movie experience with his grandson. During their trip to the theater, a same-sex scene appeared on screen, something he publicly commented on, and that moment quickly went viral online.
Madison weighs in on Snoop Dogg's comments about the Lightyear movie after his grandson asked him about two lesbians having a baby.
Snoop, you have music videos with women dancing and kissing other women, dancing naked. So why is displaying lesbian behavior in your music videos appropriate, and you are afraid to answer the questions from your grand?
First of all, why is you even, this ain't even your department. They talking about lesbians having baby, women having baby, like with other women. This ain't in your colony.
Naturally, the situation sparked widespread debate online, with people from different perspectives weighing in, especially voices from the LGBTQ+ community. Among them was T.S. Madison, who directly addressed Snoop Dogg's criticism. She pointed out that his own music videos often include scenes of women being intimate with one another, which also depict same-sex relationships, and questioned why a similar moment in a family film was suddenly an issue. In response, Jess Hilarious entered the discussion, offering her own take on the controversy.
And I felt the way. I felt the way about this because y'all let them Robert Townsend in the face looking at Jess Hilarious get her masculine voice have up on that radio station and on her thing, and I said something to that, and y'all drugged me. Y'all drugged me all up and down. Y'all drugged me. I need an apology because y'all let that mother Bomba Cloud ass get her tired, big wide nose ass up there and try to serve me. Y'all let Jess get her big wide nose ass and try to service me because I was defending my community against this right here, and then this turn around and happen, and everybody quiet. But now I see all the articles with my name attached to it. I'm looking at all the articles. Yahoo, Out Magazine. What else on here? Ooh, let me move it. Billboard. I see T.S. Madison's name all in that, right? T.S. Madison criticized his comments. T.S. Madison claps back. T.S. Madison this, T.S. Madison that, right? But y'all let that big wide nose meteor man get her mother horse voice, and then y'all was on there dragging me for defending myself against that punk ass who played pro games with me. And not only that, right? It's the in my community. It was the punks in my mother community who always get somewhere trying to be a pick Misha.
In this situation, Jess Hilarious appeared to take on the role of the instigator, sparking tension and keeping the debate alive. The two, Jess Hilarious and T.S. Madison, have had a long-standing back and forth, often clashing over issues related to gender identity. Jess has repeatedly expressed her belief that there are only men and women, rejecting the concept of transgender identities, insisting that only biological women can give birth, a stance that directly conflicts with T.S. Madison's identity as a trans woman. Their disagreements have fueled ongoing public debates, with each side firmly holding its ground. Amid this, Snoop Dogg eventually seemed to shift his perspective, reportedly working on a project called Love is Love, an animated film promoting inclusion and LGBTQ+ themes. In response, T.S. Madison revisited their earlier conflict, expressing frustration and hurt over the criticism she had previously received. She voiced that when she had earlier defended her community, she was harshly judged and mocked online. Yet when similar issues resurfaced, those same critics stayed silent. Her remarks reflected both disappointment and a call for accountability from those who had dismissed her before. After the controversy began to gain momentum online, T.S. Madison quickly noticed her name dominating the headlines of major entertainment and pop culture outlets, from Yahoo News and Out magazine to Billboard and several others. Each publication seemed eager to weigh in, often framing her as the loudest voice in the conversation, the one who had clapped back or criticized Snoop Dogg's statements regarding the gay scene that appeared in the movie he attended with his grandson. To casual readers, these articles painted Madison as bold, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge a celebrity icon. But beneath the surface, Madison felt the weight of something far more complex, a pattern she had seen before, one that left her feeling misrepresented, misunderstood, and selectively supported. According to Madison, her frustration wasn't simply about being talked about, it was about how she was being talked about, and who chose to talk only when it suited them. She expressed disappointment at what she perceived as a double standard in how people, particularly within both the LGBTQ+ and entertainment communities, responded to her. When she had previously spoken up to defend herself and her community against what she saw as harmful or dismissive remarks from comedian Jess Hilarious, Madison recalled being mocked, attacked, and even ostracized. The backlash she received then stood in stark contrast to the current silence she observed now that the debate had resurfaced in a new context. For Madison, the hypocrisy stung. She noted that some of the same individuals who had once criticized her for speaking out were now using her image and quotes to generate clicks and traffic. The media, in her eyes, had a way of sensationalizing her words, turning genuine emotion and self-defense into entertainment. She felt caught in a cycle where her passion for equality and respect was repeatedly reduced to drama, and where her role as a trans woman in public discourse was constantly scrutinized. This frustration is not unique to Madison. It reflects a larger issue faced by many public figures from marginalized communities. When individuals like her speak up, especially when their message challenges social comfort zones, they are often labeled as aggressive or angry. Yet when they stay silent, they are accused of not caring or being complicit. It's a no-win situation shaped by bias, where identity plays a disproportionate role in how one's words are received. For Madison, the narrative that surrounded her seemed to depend more on what people wanted to believe about her than on what she actually said. The controversy also highlighted the complicated intersection between celebrity, culture, and social activism. In a media landscape where outrage sells, Madison's commentary on Snoop Dogg's reaction to the film was ripe for headlines. But what was missing from much of that coverage was context. Her history of advocacy, her consistent defense of LGBTQ+ visibility, and her willingness to confront hypocrisy not just in society at large, but within her own community as well. To her, the backlash wasn't just about disagreement. It was about selective morality. People were willing to support inclusion until that inclusion required them to confront their own biases. When Madison defended herself against Jess Hilarious's remarks in earlier months, she wasn't simply arguing with another entertainer, she was responding to a mindset that, in her view, perpetuated exclusion. Hilarious had previously questioned the validity of transgender identity, asserting that only biological women were real women. Madison, in defending her community, used her platform to push back against that rhetoric. But rather than being celebrated for standing up for marginalized people, she became a target. Many accused her of being too harsh, too outspoken, or too emotional. The irony, Madison would later suggest, was that those same critics now watched in silence as the conversation reignited, this time with her name being circulated by the same media outlets that once ignored her perspective. Her disappointment reveals an important truth about the digital age. Support is often conditional. Many people and platforms champion equality in principle, but in practice, their solidarity tends to fade when the message becomes uncomfortable or controversial. Public figures like T.S. Madison often exist at this intersection, where advocacy collides with visibility, and where every statement is dissected through the lens of identity politics. It's not just what she said that drew attention, it was who she was when she said it. Madison's situation also exposes how media representation shapes public understanding. In the rush to simplify complex stories, nuance often gets lost. Headlines like T.S. Madison claps back or T.S. Madison slams Snoop Dogg grab attention, but they strip away intention, tone, and emotional context. Readers see the conflict, not the cause. They see confrontation, not conviction. And that lack of nuance perpetuates stereotypes of trans women as combative, of Black women as angry, and of public disagreements as entertainment rather than dialogue. Yet, beneath her frustration, there's a larger call for accountability, not just for those who criticized her, but for the culture that rewards controversy over comprehension. Madison's message is ultimately about fairness. She wants the same people who demand civility and understanding from marginalized voices to apply those same standards universally. If it was wrong to ridicule her before, it should be wrong now to exploit her words for profit or performance. If society truly believes in inclusion, then that inclusion should extend to listening with empathy, not just reacting for engagement. In essence, Madison's reflection on this situation serves as both a critique and a reminder. It exposes how selective support and sensationalist storytelling continue to undermine genuine progress. It reminds audiences that behind every headline is a human being, one who feels, struggles, and seeks respect just like anyone else. And it challenges both media and society to do better, to report responsibly, to engage respectfully, and to recognize that advocacy is not a spectacle, but a sincere pursuit of equality. At its core, this controversy was never just about a movie scene or a celebrity's opinion. It was about the power of narrative, who gets to control it, who gets to distort it, and who gets left out of it. For T.S. Madison, the fight wasn't only for representation. It was for the right to define her own story, on her own terms. Madison's latest response carried intense emotion and, at times, harsh language, directed not only at Jess Hilarious, but also at members of her own community, whom she felt had failed to support her. Her statement sparked fresh debate, with critics arguing that her tone revealed underlying frustration or even hostility toward women, while supporters saw her remarks as a justified defense against ongoing disrespect. On one side, some commentators accused T.S. Madison of displaying what they called undercover misogyny, suggesting her comments toward women, including Jess Hilarious, often involved unfair comparisons to men and reflected deeper issues of resentment. On the other hand, many within the LGBTQ+ community came to Madison's defense, pointing out that Jess Hilarious has a long history of making dismissive or inflammatory remarks about trans and gay people. They argued that while disagreement is fair, repeatedly targeting an entire group is not, and that if someone truly dislikes a community, the most respectful course is simply to refrain from engaging or speaking negatively about them at all. I want to take a moment to share an observation. Normally, I try to avoid jumping into YouTube commentary like this, but this situation stood out to me. There's a content creator named Funky Dineva, who is openly gay and sometimes performs in drag. He's often described as a strong supporter of Black women, yet there have been moments when his remarks about them, such as comments directed at Chloe Bailey, have crossed a line. Whether intentional or not, his words can sometimes come off as disrespectful. Part of this may come from the fact that his audience is largely composed of Black women, and over time he's grown comfortable expressing himself freely, occasionally forgetting that. As a man, his words carry a different kind of weight. This brings us to T.S. Madison. Many people still don't view Madison as a natural-born woman, which complicates the way her comments are received. When critics call her misogynistic, what they're really implying is that they don't see her as a woman, because by definition, misogyny refers to a dislike or contempt for women. That label, then, reflects a deeper perception issue, people judging her identity before her words. What this situation reveals is that anyone, whether they're a trans woman, a gay man, or a straight man like myself, must be mindful of how they speak to and about women, even when responding to conflict. I've personally experienced how quickly public perception can turn. In one instance, I collaborated with a woman I had long supported, only to have her later post a harsh video about me online. Experiences like that remind me how delicate these dynamics can be, and how important it is to choose our words carefully, regardless of who starts the argument. The situation reminded me of a personal experience I once had with a woman I collaborated with online. At one point, she released a video that criticized me harshly. It wasn't filled with accusations or personal attacks, but the tone and energy were undeniably negative. I remember thinking that if the same situation had occurred with a man, I would have reacted differently. But because she was a woman, I chose restraint. After all, had I responded in kind, no one would have cared who started it. The public narrative would have simply been that I, as a man, was disrespecting a woman, and that would have been enough for people to call me misogynistic. That's why I see T.S. Madison's comments toward Jess Hilarious as problematic. Regardless of how heated things became, resorting to insults and name-calling undermines the message she's trying to stand for, especially as someone who advocates for equality and respect. It's not about who threw the first punch in the argument. It's about maintaining composure and dignity even when challenged. If the roles were reversed, Madison would likely be demanding that same respect for herself. The bigger concern here is perception, how people interpret what they see, hear, and feel in moments of public conflict. Perception has a powerful way of shaping reality, especially in today's digital age where a single clip or post can be replayed, remixed, and reinterpreted hundreds of times within hours. When people witness someone who identifies as a trans woman speaking harshly toward another woman, the optics alone can be misleading. Regardless of intent, tone, or context, such exchanges often reinforce an already divisive narrative. The idea that trans women are somehow in opposition to, or attempting to replace, biological women. This perception is deeply rooted in long-standing social tensions. For many, gender identity remains a sensitive and complex topic, often tied to personal beliefs, religion, or cultural background. When conversations turn hostile, the focus shifts from understanding to accusation. The nuance of identity, what it means to live authentically as oneself, gets lost in the noise of defensiveness and outrage. As a result, rather than bridging gaps between communities, moments like these tend to widen them. What could have been an opportunity for education and empathy instead becomes another headline, another thread of online conflict, and another example of how quickly the internet rewards outrage over understanding. Trans women, in particular, are often at the center of this delicate balance. On one hand, they face intense scrutiny and discrimination for simply existing as who they are. On the other, they must navigate the expectations placed upon women in society, expectations that are already fraught with inequality and judgment. When a trans woman is seen speaking critically or aggressively toward another woman, that behavior isn't judged in isolation. It's filtered through existing biases. People don't just see a disagreement between two individuals. They see a symbolic clash between trans and cis, between identity and biology, between inclusion and tradition. This creates a painful paradox. The very movement that advocates for equality and understanding becomes entangled in debates that appear, from the outside, as internal conflict. The public, especially those who already misunderstand or oppose transgender rights, seizes on these moments as evidence that inclusion is somehow threatening or hypocritical. It's not fair, but it's the unfortunate reality of public discourse. Perception often outweighs truth, and this is where self-control and empathy become essential. Advocacy isn't just about demanding respect. It's about modeling it. Inclusion cannot truly exist if it only applies to certain groups or if it excludes those who disagree. For any movement to grow stronger, it must demonstrate the very principles it asks others to adopt: patience, understanding, and the ability to engage with criticism without resorting to hostility. When someone like T.S. Madison, who has a large platform and represents an important voice within the LGBTQ+ community, speaks out in anger, the words don't just reflect personal frustration. They echo through communities that are already fragile and divided. At the same time, it's crucial to acknowledge that this expectation of composure can be unfairly heavy. Trans women, especially Black trans women, are often pushed to defend their humanity every day, in public spaces, online, and even within LGBTQ+ circles. That kind of constant emotional labor takes a toll. Anger, frustration, and exhaustion are valid human emotions. The challenge lies in transforming that pain into something constructive, using one's voice not to alienate, but to enlighten. That doesn't mean staying silent when wronged. It means choosing words that create dialogue rather than division. The same standard applies to those who criticize the trans community. Dismissing or mocking trans identities, as some public figures and commentators have done, also fuels this cycle of hostility. When individuals like Jess Hilarious make statements that invalidate trans identities or reduce gender to rigid biological categories, it further entrenches misunderstanding. Each side ends up reacting to the other's pain, and empathy is lost in the process. Instead of listening, everyone starts defending. This is where social media plays a defining role. Platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube thrive on emotional engagement. Outrage gets clicks, algorithms amplify conflict, and subtlety rarely goes viral. A short clip stripped of context can instantly shape how thousands view a situation. People start forming opinions not based on the full conversation, but on the most sensational 30 seconds of it. In such an environment, perception becomes a currency, and empathy, unfortunately, loses its value. That's why it's vital for influential figures, both in the LGBTQ+ community and beyond, to be mindful of how they communicate. Every word, every tone, every facial expression can be magnified and reinterpreted. The responsibility is heavy, but it's also an opportunity, a chance to reshape narratives that have long been driven by division. When leaders speak with composure and compassion, even in the face of provocation, they don't just protect their own image. Entire conversation. Respect must move in both directions. True inclusion is not about agreement, it's about coexistence. You can disagree without demeaning, critique without cruelty, and defend your community without destroying another's dignity. When that balance is lost, everyone suffers. Trans women are further misunderstood. Cisgender women feel invalidated, and allies are left confused about where to stand. At the end of the day, the goal should not be to win arguments, but to build understanding. The progress of equality depends on more than just rights. It depends on relationships, how communities see and treat one another. If we can learn to approach conflict with patience instead of pride and compassion instead of contempt, then perception begins to shift. The more empathy we show, the fewer walls there will be between us. Because inclusion isn't proven in moments of agreement, it's tested in how we handle our disagreements.